a registered charitable trust from Panjim, and we have been doing a lot of work in connection with the Kampal Creek, the coconut issue, and various other matters. Today, we feel that Goa is at crossroads. A lot of contentious issues are hitting us in the face. So the concept of having a fathering Goa idea is because even in a family, if there is stress, if there are divisions, it is the father who is the ultimate arbiter. So fathering Goa is a way of taking this idea of bringing diverse forces together, and our topics are hot topics. The first one is communal harmony. The second is environment with a special effect on saving the waters of Goa. And the third is heritage and language. We have got some very interesting people for you in the panels, which includes Member of Parliament, Mr. Narendra Savaikar, ex-Union Law Minister, Mr. Ramakant Kalap. We have also current Art and Culture Minister, Mr. Govind Gowde, Vivek Menezes, a well-known published writer, amongst others. So whatever you're going to hear and listen is what we're trying to present to you and asking Goa to come forward with new thoughts. Most of our old thoughts have been failed ones, and that's why we are struggling. But now is the time for each and every one of us to come forward and put our thoughts on the table and give this idea of fathering Goa a thrust, something new, something all-encompassing, something which is unifying. And along with fathering Goa, which is very much on Father's Day today, we also amazingly have Goa Revolution Day. So finally, we're talking of a revolution to bring the father figure, the all-encompassing loving figure into the fray. Happy viewing.
Hello. Welcome to another panel discussion hosted by Goa for Giving under the general banner of Fathering Goa. Today we're going to be talking about heritage. My name is Vivek Menezes. I'm a writer and along with Damodar Mauzo, a founder and curator of the Goa Arts and Literature Festival. Today I'd like to welcome the new Minister for Art and Culture, Mr. Govind Gowde. Vishwesh Kandolkar is an associate professor at the Goa College of Architecture. And here we have Jack Sukeja, who is a partner at the Welcome Heritage Panjim Inn, which is the first and only classified heritage hotel of Goa. I'd like to lay out a little bit of what we're going to be talking about. Obviously, heritage is a very important banner term that includes many things. We will definitely talk about the built heritage of Goa. But there are also many intangibles, that is the culture of Goa, the language, the kind of ethos of Goa that stretches across many things. I thought we'd first start with Mr. Gowde. Mr. Gowde, congratulations on taking over this very important role. What is your vision for the upcoming years?
Definitely, my first vision is to maintain the Goa's dignity, its identity. And we have to always maintain the tradition of the Goan culture. And the Goa is for Goa, Goikar and Goikarpan. This is the three words we have to take forward by considering all the views. The Goa is a beautiful place. It is a scenic beauty. It has its origin. We have to retain that, whatever in terms of monuments are there, heritage that we have to preserve. And we have to see this Goa a green forever. That is my main motto regarding this small Goa and a beautiful Goa.
Thank you. Vishwesh, you focus a lot on the heritage architecture of Goa. That's one part of it, but there's also the element of the balance that Mr. Gowde is talking about here. The balance of environment and built heritage. That seems to be under a lot of stress in Goa today. There's also there's a social balance, which is between the communities. We have a very beautiful syncretic culture in Goa, which also seems to be under threat due to demographic change and also a kind of negligence, perhaps. Would you speak to that, please?
See, when we talk about heritage, there are two components which we have to always focus. One is a tangible heritage, and the second one is intangible heritage. Now, when you say tangible heritage, there are very physical artifacts like, say, architecture, the artifacts which have been left over. It could be crockery or it could be any of the arts which has been there. But then, on the other hand, we also have the intangible heritage, And Goa is a component which is built largely on the intangible heritage, which has been kind of a global place. And it has been built by that whole endeavoring resourcefulness of the Goans who've been all over the place, accepted the culture which has been come from outside or they have been inside. So it has been a kind of a very enriched, modern, Europeanized, so to say, culture which is here. And that kind of culture, which is very difficult to find any other place here, and which is why the Goan unique identity, which is called, is been there. Now, what happens in today's context is that normally when you say heritage, it is pitted against progress and development. And when you want to talk about heritage, you want to say that progress and development is counter to heritage. Now, that is not so. Any good developing place understands that heritage is part and parcel of development. It is a process through which you recognize development and heritage as an integral part. Only then you can make yourself as a progressive society. If we have to maintain ourselves as continuing to maintain as something which is progressively across India much more ahead of its time, then we have to see both of this together. And when I say heritage, both the tangible and intangible. We'll talk about it more, but I think both are together. So in this discussion, at least, we should always talk about both progress and heritage together.
Thank you, Vishwesh. Those are excellent points. That's perfect intro to you, Jack, because in your work at the Welcome Heritage Panjamin, you deal with both the tangible heritage, which is a neighborhood, but also the intangible neighborhood, which is the culture that the neighborhood represents, and which is quite fragile, I think, and could very easily be a threat. I wanted to ask you, since we have the minister here, the success in a way of Panjamin within the context of Fontainhas and the so-called Latin Quarter, that is largely a result of the living neighborhood itself, right? It's not necessarily state intervention. Is that correct? Would you like to see more state intervention? Would state intervention help in this regard?
To take on your basic question is how the Fontainhas has developed as sort of a cultural asset and people have given in. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So what I would say is, you would say that it developed on its own. There was an interest in culture. It portrayed a Goan way of life. And the culture which you largely got from there was an assimilation of both. You had the Catholic culture with a lot of the food, the language, the dress coming in, as well as the Hindu culture which came in with the Mala area and all that. So, you could say that it naturally attracted people and it became an ideal place for regeneration of a downtown using tourism. With till now, yes, fortunately, unfortunately, there has not been much government intervention. But useful government intervention always helps. The state as a player can always help as long as it does the right things. So what would you do? What would I say? What are my ideas on what should be done there? One is there's an issue of garbage. There's an issue of parking there that has to be addressed, and you have to see how it becomes more pedestrian friendly, a cleaner neighborhood. I think also through the JNU RRM, there has been a lot of money which is coming into that area. And one of the things within that area, while it's very pretty to look, it's quite, there are areas, pockets where basic facilities have not reached, water has not reached, there's no good sewage, and people are quite poor in certain pockets. So I think these funds which are coming in be useful in helping it, provided they're used well and a proper plan is in place for that.
Thank you, Jack. Mr. Gowde, Fontainhas is talked about so often in Goa. It's almost become like a short form for Goan heritage. And it's very photogenic, so many ads are shot there. But the whole state of Goa actually can be treated like Fontainhas, because the whole state of Goa has this very precious balance between environment and built heritage and a unique culture. Vishwesh referred to it as Europeanized. I prefer the word globalized because it includes influences from all over, from South America, from Latin America, from Africa, and definitely deep roots in India as well. So what do you think your ministry can do as a vision to take this kind of success of whatever the success elements of Fontainhas? Can you do that on a statewide basis? Is that your goal?
Okay, definitely we have to look upon to retain the identity and the cultural aspects are concerned. Without development, sustainable development I'm talking about. If there is no development, there are so many tourists, foreign tourists are coming to the Goa, even Indian tourists are also coming to the Goa. But we want a very clean and green Goa. Unless and until we are not having a clean and green Goa, and now totally as far as the revenue is concerned, we have to totally depend upon the tourism, because tourism is the backbone of the Goa. It becomes, because mining has been almost collapsed. And if we are looking about the tourism, then definitely we have to take care of all these things, because without development, by not disturbing the monuments or the heritage, we have to always go ahead with our plans, and government is trying to keep and to maintain all these things. Finally, one thing happens: we cannot fulfill everybody's demand, or we cannot fulfill, because in 100% we can deliver 90%. It is obviously it is often because every government who is ruling the government, they have to balance all the stakeholders by considering even the cultural beauty, its identity, and the tourism point of view.
Thank you. Vishwesh, in this context about preservation, I'd like to come back to this point, because you take examples, for instance, like a place like Macau, and it's not ideal in many ways because it's given itself completely to casinos. But in places like Macau, the Chinese, for instance, who are just as anti-colonial as Indians are, do their best to retain as much as they can of the past in terms of at least the coloring or the effect of Macau. Somehow in Goa, there seems to be a resistance sometimes to embracing all the various aspects of our complex history. Would you like to speak to that a bit?
I'll talk about three levels. One is when we talk about the word green or sustainable development, and we talk about our resources, which is land. Now, when we say we want to go ahead in terms of tourism, it's a great plan and has a great potential. But at times what happens in any tourist destination, tourism becomes a backdoor entry for second homes. Now, second homes residents are not necessarily residents who are invested into the place. They don't know the culture of the place. So they are more interested in trying to have a second home here and then boast about it. So in which case, you do still get architecture which gets preserved, because they want to say, okay, it's a nice place, we want to keep it. But the intangible ones, the people get displaced, which is not great again. So you might still have preserved monuments and not still be conducive for people. So we must look at saying that, okay, how do we really resourcefully use the land, not trying to give it for second homes, and this is not a problem only of Goa. Switzerland, for example, went through it, and they had a vote, in fact, a very common vote, in which they voted saying that not more than 20% of the land will be given out for large-scale development, which is meant for that. So there is needs to be a cap, saying that we will not, above this point, we will not be able to sustain people who will not be invested into this place, one. But secondly, I think also we have to look at tourism industry as a cow versus the milk. Is it that are we servicing the industry, or we are already selling the very service which we are supposed to sell? If you're going to do second or third level of selling off, which is again tourism, which is going to be some other investors, some other people. So largely, if you're going to start plugging it into a larger capitalist market, then we are not going to have a tourism destination. We're going to have tourism destination, but the people are not going to be invested into it. So people of Goa are going to lose. We cannot have people of Goa losing their revenue, losing their ways of life, and sometimes, which is why they are anti-tourism sometimes to some extent, because one can understand that tourism with large capitalist investments goes completely haywire. One cannot control. The second part of it, which you said about preservation. I recently went to Bon Jesus Basilica, and I didn't go there to check the basilica. We had gone to meet one priest there, visit the sound, and we saw that the Bon Jesus Basilica is a heritage monument, which is a global monument. It is recognized as a World Heritage Site. Funds come from, probably comes from all those things, and we still saw there is leakages happening in there, which means even the ASI. ASI is an agency which was, British time agency, Archaeological Survey of India, and Lord Curzon did a lot of work. It's a kind of agency which does a lot of work, tries to preserve the monument, but doesn't really understand exactly how to do it. Probably still goes for the lowest quote. I don't know. So one could see that there are leakages. One can see that this monument, which still requires plastering, which is another debate which we can come to. And we have money, but we don't know exactly how to go about preserving it, or not knowing how to go about doing it. And then there are a lot of other monuments which are outside the purview of ASI, which is there under archives, and those monuments also don't get preserved. Of course, houses and all are not counted as one of those monuments which are there. So we require to do a comprehensive kind of planning to say what do we do for heritage, what is the planning processes, how do we do that. For example, Edgar Ribeiro, famous town planner, and he said that the basic thing about Goa Heritage Monument, there are rules which says that you have to keep 200 meters. Beyond that, you cannot do this. And he's saying that on our regional plan or on our plans, those 200-meter lines are not even recognized as a. So what happens to those kind of very physical kind of planning? So we require to do a lot of level of work to really understand how to really conserve, preserve, and then beyond conserve, preserve, look at the people's, how do people get reflected into them? Because we are not looking at empty monuments, we're looking at intangible heritage also. So both simultaneously.
Thank you, Vishwesh. I think a very important point that you raised here, which I think Mr. Gaude also did, is that it's one part of it is preserving Goa, or preserving both the countryside as well as the monument. The other part of it, which is a little more complicated, is preserving the Goan in Goa. Right? You don't just want to retain the built architecture, you want to retain the culture that created it, that sustains it, because when you take it out of that system, somehow the character of it changes. This is a very important question. And the Ministry of Art and Culture has a role in terms of encouraging the existing culture. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Definitely. Last 1 month back, I had went to Udaipur at Rajasthan. There are so many forts which are ruled by Rana Pratap and their ancestral families. I saw so many things has been placed by the ASI, Archaeological Survey of India, and they are getting a lot of funds. You are talking about the funds; they are getting a lot of funds, but only there should be some enthusiasm. There should be some interest by the local this thing, because ASI belongs to it is a centrally union ministry. It belongs to the central ministry. It's not coming into the purview of the art and culture. So in that aspect, if we think, then definitely we can do much more better than that. And I have also put a word to the union minister, because last 15 days back I had met to Dr. Mahesh Sharma. I was having a meeting with the union minister for art and culture, and I have put everything in front of him. Another one meeting will be carried out in the month of July. So I have put everything in front of him, and he has given me word that I'll give the adequate fund to maintain the monuments, and which is any maintenance is required, that I am going to fund. The question comes over is not of fund, is more is of interest. Now he is talking about the Bom Jesus Basilica. This thing I had been always there after every 1 year and all that. But there are so many, some monuments it is very difficult us to preserve, because if we touch to this site or a spot, it totally collapses, and it becomes very difficult us to maintain the same thing. So there are some places where we cannot do like this, but either we have to build it in a new structure, or otherwise it is not possible us to retain same structure. So that is the problem. There is a technical problem also. We cannot fully blame to the ASI. That is also technical, because we are the human beings. We also know it is not in the hand of us, because and especially in the Goa is having a maximum rainfall in the state, and it is very difficult us to maintain all these things. And that is why, as far as government part is concerned, we are definitely looking into this matter, and I have put personally interest to enrich the heritage and the identity of the Goa. And he also raised one question that the hospitality of the Goa is not because of the Goan, because the people who have come from the outside, they little bit spoil the image of our Goa, and that is one drawback which our image has been passed on to the international level, so that there are so many misdeeds is happening in the Goa, and that is why we are also losing our revenue, because without revenue it is very difficult us to maintain all these things, because we always have to see that revenue is the first, and then interest, and the planning. If the planning point of view, if we consider everything is perfect, then definitely it is very easy to maintain its identity, and we can say that we are real Goan for Goikar and for Goikar.
Thank you. I have you raise a very important point, which is in the enthusiasm. I think that it's clear that across Goa there is a deep caring about both the intangible as well as the tangible, the built heritage of all different types. A question that I'd like to come to, and we'll first start with Jack, we'll go back to Mr. Gaude, is this question of know-how. One of the problems that happens in Goa, and we'll choose Panjim as a perfect example, is that very often decisions are made when it comes to the built heritage, but also intangible heritage, but particularly with built heritage, the decisions are made in a very opaque manner without consulting the people at all. I'll give you two examples, Mr. Gaude. One is the Azad Maidan, which is a ground that has existed with great success for over 150 years. You have a monument in the middle, which is a Palladian, Neo-Palladian style. You have the freedom fighters there. They have now built, without the knowledge of the CCP, a giant toilet. I mean, a toilet which is as big as the monument next to it. And this is a multi-crore toilet. When you have within 50 yards, 50 meters away, you have a Sulabh toilet. Yet this giant toilet has been built. This is done with consulting nobody. I'll give you another example. The residency, the Panjim Residency Hotel, which is in a heritage block, which is next to the old secretariat, has been redone in a way that is completely appalling, again in a very opaque manner. In these areas, I think the know-how which does exist, the sensibility which does exist within the state has been ignored. We have to create a new mechanism where citizens can be involved in this. The neighborhood you represent, which is Fontainebleau, is very alert to these kinds of changes. How do you see that kind of sensibility playing out? How did that happen to the Miramar, to the Panjim residency? How did that happen? How did it happen that this giant toilet was inserted right next to the freedom fighters monument in Azad Maidan? What is the failure of it? What are the lessons we can learn from it? And how can we move forward so that these kinds of grotesque things don't happen again?
Coming to this, I think largely, planning has always been very ad hoc in Goa. There's not been a comprehensive plan, and various agencies look at it in different ways. Coming to the tourist hostel, or what was the tourism residency, basically, I think pre-84 there was no conservation zone, and a lot of buildings came up there which basically looked at maximizing FAR or maximum usage, and so that trend continued, and you try to put as much facilities as possible. With regard to what has happened at Azad Maidan, I really don't know what is the issue of why that toilet has come there. Of course, we need more toilets. We need more toilets. We need better facilities where people can go and use them, because toilets is a big issue which faces the tourism industry all over. And a lot of foreign tourists complain that if we go to a public monument, we don't have access to good toilets and things like that, which you get easily abroad. But what has happened in Panjim specifically on this, I wouldn't be able to say.
What about the lessons of Fontainebleau about this citizenry being alert? I mean, do you feel this is something that can be rolled out across Goa?
I think citizenry has largely been very alert in Goa, but it's a question of who, the chicken or the egg. No one knows what can be done and what can't be done. So we come to a messy compromise where every time there's something that comes in is a hodgepodge. No one knows clearly that, okay, we can do this, we can renovate this way. Or we don't, when we do it, we are told we cannot do it that way. So I think once you come in with clear regulations that this can be done, this can not be done, and the greatest thing would be if it would go digital, where there's less human interface. You say, you put a plan, this is what is there, this can be done. It's clear, it's done. So that would be, I think, ideal. But citizenry largely in Goa is alert. But no one can tell you, if I go today and ask someone, if I do this, is this okay before I do a plan? No one will tell you a blanket answer, okay, go do it. He'll say, it can be possible, it can't be possible, this might go wrong. So I don't think our regulations are very clear.
Mr. Gaude, is this something that you yourself face, this kind of ambiguity, where it's not clear what is possible and what is not possible?
No, I fully believe in you. There are lapses from the past government, that I also agree with that, because the question comes about the toilet at the vicinity of that Kranti Maidan, Azad Maidan. But architectural point of view, there should be a toilet, because there are so many people, for example, the Protestants are sitting quiet for their demands or something. But it should be designed in such a way that it should not look that there is a toilet. That is the architectural point of view. But now the department I'm having. So when I have took over my departments, I have always taken into the confidence to the people of that area. For example, I can just give one example. There was a newly construction of Ravindra Bhavan at Kankon. First and foremost, what I have done, I have taken the all the Kankon cars into the confidence. I have modified the design. Then I went forward, and now the work is in place. That is my point of view. Professionally, I am an engineer. I know what is to be done in the angle. That's why I can understand this. But there are so many people who must, if they don't know, they have to take the advice from somebody else. Because I cannot, an engineer cannot do a work of a doctor, or a doctor cannot do a work of an engineer. They are everybody's master in their own field. So unless until we are not going to consider all these people into the confidence, it is very difficult us to make the sustainable development or the development which people like. Because there are some people who are always fingering, even government do a very good thing, they are also going to shout. If a government is going to do the bad thing, it is their right. But always see that there are 100% it is not possible. Even it is not possible to any government nor any person, because that is the perspective which are looking forward, that we have to take into the confidence. And it is, I think, we always have to, because the government is run by the people. It is for the people, of the people, and by the people. So it is our duty also, as far as government is concerned, it is our also, we should take confidence to the people of that vicinity or that area with the proper intellectual people. That's all.
Thank you. Vishwesh, this question of know-how. Many of these decisions are made without consulting architects, for instance, or people who have an interest in the actual neighborhood. Buildings seem very often, government-built buildings seem to be dropped from, you could look at those giant buildings built outside Margao also as an example. Would you like to speak further about this?
It's very funny because there is one, I just want to touch about the monument. It's like today, for example, I mean, sometimes when you go to a small place like Tatos, and you happen to ask that person who's serving there, what do you do about a toilet? Because in Tatos there is no toilet. So he says, no, I have to walk all the way out there. So if there's a true monument today, then it should be a toilet. Because if the intangible people is not, and in Goa, if you just go and check how many number of kidney, I mean, if you have problems, urinary tract infection, all the thing, you have many of them. So there should be no denying that toilets are required. But then the method of how do you do toilet, like he rightly said, how do you do it, and what is the kind of process which you set? For example, if you do a large model, good enough that you can walk around the city of Panjim, and even if you want to insert a toilet, you just place it there and you just see whether it fits or not fits. Immediately everybody will come to know. So what you require is that now a different method of operating in kind of a participatory planning, because sometimes even if you go with a plan to a meeting like this and you say, here is my toilet, people don't understand. You do a model, you place it there, maybe you give a perspective, you'll understand what you're going to get into. So I think so there is even in participatory planning, there is a process of transparency which is required, and which can only come through improving and including better methods of participation. One. See, when we want to rebuild, and especially if you take Panjim, Margao, any of these things, we like to be as close to the heart of Panjim. So even if there is a commercial center, we want to be in the heart. We want to rip apart the heart and we want to place ourselves selling our wares there, so to say. Because we think that if we are closer to it, it's better. But we should also talk about how do we do a kind of a development which has equitable distribution of densities across. If we don't do that, and Charles Correa is we were having a discussion, and one student asked Charles, how do you justify, we have a tall tower will take care of all the problems. And he said, have you done the calculations? He was very very direct. Have you done the calculations? He took a checkbook, he drew on that, and he said, all people, if they stay in, like, say, 50-story building on this one, and then what does it require? He asked the student, what does it require? He said, school. Okay, school, hospital, theater. And then saying, okay, if you start putting those things across, you will find that they are going to travel equal at much distance. So you're saying the tall buildings are not going to solve your problem. And we recently saw the fire which has happened in London. I think so in Goa, we cannot go the high-rise method. And if you speak to the chief of the fire, he'll say it is easier to handle fire in a building which are dense and close by. They can even go on motorcycle with those fire hydrants in a dense building than going in a tall building. Because tall building, once the lower one catches fire, it goes on top. So in terms of fire safety, in terms of any kind of development, even in terms of aesthetics, it's very easy that we can go into dense high density, low rise is the option, and this is what also I think so. When we want to do planning, that is kind of done. So obviously, high rises, even if it is Margam, Panjim, and all, might not solve the.
Right. What about this? But you talked very broadly about participation, and Vishwesh has also brought that up. This idea of participation. We have many iconic buildings here in Goa which come under your department. I understand the old secretariat also does, right?
Yeah.
So these are buildings which have been plans have been made over years without actually a very broad participation. Would you and last year we saw via serendipity, the use of the building was quite marvelous. What are the plans for that building and for other heritage structures? Do you have any specific plans in mind?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, I have already said, I want to make this Panjim as a cultural city. That is what first and foremost I have to do. Because there are few cultural cities in India, but I am looking in that direction that Panjim should be a cultural city, because Goan tradition, for example, the folk in every religion, the entire tourists come and they went on the beaches. That is not our culture. Whatever the culture or the real Goan identity which we find is an interior part of our Goa. And if we want to bring this interior part, the cultural folk from the interior part to the city, then we should have a cultural hub, cultural city, and that I have planned to be it in Panjim, so that we are going to have our cultural, rich culture in the state of Goa, in the capital city of Goa, that is a Panjim. That is one perspective I am talking about. The second thing, I have some plans in my mind that a temple town city, where Goa is having a lot of temples and the churches also. Little mosaics are there. The tourists which are coming to visit the temples and churches, they should also have the importance, because the tourists who are coming across the world, they don't know what is Goa. They know the Goa is totally surrounded by the waters. We have to just enjoy in that water and go back. But real culture of the Goa is hidden. It is at the interior parts of the Goa, and that culture we have to bring in the center, and that is why I've said that Panjim is going to become a cultural city. That the process is already going in process, and definitely I will see that entire Goan tradition, its culture will come under one roof, and the building which is there existing, this old secretariat, will make a full use of that.
It's wonderful to hear. Yeah. Good luck with that. This idea of Goa as a culture hub, Panjim as a culture hub, how do you see that working? I mean, can that work to the benefit of the Goans?
In fact, before Mr. Gaude said it, I wanted to take a minute later and make an appeal to him to do it, and he's already taken it on board, so I'm great. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think Panjim is absolutely well poised to be a cultural hub. It has got everything. It has got heritage assets, it's got a beach, it's got parks, gardens, it's got great greenery, it's got a hill. So I think it is something which will really benefit Panjim as a whole. And if you look at it also in terms of business, Panjim does not have much of industry or this thing. There is basically service, there are professionals, there are a few restaurants and a few hotels. Besides that, there's nothing, and government, which is largely moving out now to Porvorim and on the suburbs. So the only way to rejuvenate Panjim and somehow maintain its charm, I think, is by making it as a cultural hub. It's a fantastic idea. If it can be implemented well, nothing like it.
I tend to agree very much, and I think it's already happening. Panjim is already, I've written about it many times, Panjim is developed as a culture capital for the rest of the country. IFI was a first big step. We now have Serendipity, we have the Goa Arts and Literature Festival. These are terrific things. With we have the Kosambi lectures, that's already working. I think the challenge Panjim is a jewel already, and when you polish it, it will shine all the more brightly on an international standard. My question, I'll throw it to Vishwesh, is what about the rest of Goa? I mean, really, when we look at the villages, many of them are jewels. You talk about the folk culture, Goa is one of the richest. It's just completely misunderstood or not known at all. We have a terrific artistic tradition that goes again deep into the countryside. How can we make all of that flourish, Vishwesh?
See, let me just touch the temples issue, because when we think about Goan temples, we try to do, see, in Goa, at least the churches have certain kind of centralized way of operating because the bishop takes care of all those things. The temples of Goa are completely decentralized and Mahajans are controlling it. And if you see what most temples are doing, the most beautiful heritage temples are being destroyed, most of them. So if we really want to make even if you want to make a temple city, we have to make some ways of trying to bring all this, my colleague, historian Amita Kanekar is doing a research there and saying that 18th century, 19th century temples which are built in Indo-Portuguese styles have been ripped apart and larger temples are being built. Now, one is to just identify the temples and say they are a rich cultural heritage because they are a religious place, of course, but they are also kind of a markers of history. So by doing this reconstruction, breaking temples, some of them and many of them, we are kind of trying to re-put the markers of history and sometimes trying to put them a little more behind than the Portuguese, and there's an obvious certain kind of political agenda there. So we have to, one of the things which I would say is that look at the ways in which many temples, and I know that a lot of money which has been given to the local Mahajan temples been given, trying to build a large hall in front of temples, and these large halls which were essentially the halls for conducting natak or theatres or a few things, have again completely defiled the temples or broken temples. So if you go to the interiors of Goa, and there are very good, Narwa or any other places, very good Indo-Portuguese styled temples are being destroyed, we need to look at that. How do we really conserve the way architectural conservation of those? One. The second thing is, if you really want to bring conservation to a grassroots level, a different level, then we need to look at, see, when we talk about heritage in Goa, there is a particular kind of elitist, upper caste way of looking at it. We say, if it is filtered through a certain lens of a gaze, we say it is a heritage, and if it is not heritage. And therefore, even ordinary men start thinking that only that is a heritage and other part is not. So, if, for example, a typical book which will say the Goan house, and you go and open the Goan house, and they are all upper caste Goan houses which are being there in the thing. The problem is that a Goan house, any Goan house is a heritage house. So there is, even between the people who are looking after heritage, there is certain notions that there are only few things which are heritage. And we need to break that notion, thinking that the heritage is there at a very different level, at different people. They might not be as refined at certain places. So how do we take that whole cultural mode of life? Like, for example, if you want to have a simple balcony, or a veranda, which is going to be in a house which is in a village, it's still a cultural artifact and doesn't require to look at a gaze like somebody coming and saying, wow, it's a heritage. It is a lived heritage. So we need to make this distinction between there are certain things which are lived heritage, and even, for example, the Bailipet in Bicholi, there are houses which were touching each other. Now, if you go by the sanctions rules of today, you say 3 meter setback, it just destroys the complete fabric which is a street. In that Bailipet, one house started being 3 meter setback, and it completely looks very different. So now, which means there are a lot of other places, whether it is Bicholim, it is Ponda, it is Kankana, interiors, where there are, what we say heritage and not recognized heritage, which is there. One only needs to start looking at them, saying that these are also something which is very important to Goa and Goans, and without having some plans to bring them out. And it happens in every village. Even if you go to any villages, also if you go, it's already there. That kind of fabric is already there.
Thank you, Vishwesh. Those are very important points. At one point, soon I'll throw it to the audience, but I want to make a general comment, which is also to Mr. Gaude, which is that it seems like we are coming due to a number of factors, because of the demographic change in Goa, because of a kind of an idea now which has been projected that there is only one way to be Indian. It seems like we are coming to an existential threat to the idea of Goa, going upon, if you like. And this is a battle that the Goans have had to fight repeatedly. During the Portuguese era, they famously said, this is Portugal, aqui é Portugal. We had to kind of defend ourselves against the idea that this was Portugal. After 1961, there was the idea that this is basically part of Maharashtra. We are all Maharashtrians. We have to be part of Maharashtra. That was another battle the Goans had to fight. After that, there was a battle for the language, for Konkani. This is not a language, and we had to fight that battle. I think also we are coming to the point, not a violent battle, but a battle that has to be fought to say that this is Goa and Goan culture is distinct. And it includes everything that Vishwesh is talking about. It is the small house in the village, which is just as profound a document of our culture as it is the giant houses. And one of the problems is in Goa is we continually cede the definition of culture to the outside, to someone who doesn't understand it. This is why absurdly, even in our own tourism literature, we are talking about this is a Portuguese house, that is a Portuguese house, when there is no house like this in Portugal. These are houses that have grown profoundly out of Goan culture. And we look at different aspects of our food, and this is we talk about things that are European. These are actually profound synthesis. So I think that it's very important when we're talking about our culture, that we define it ourselves. And I think one aspect of this that is now the point is it's not just defending, it is also projecting. And I'd like to ask the minister this. It is not enough sometimes, Mr. Gowde, just to preserve our idea of what is Goa.
Yeah, definitely. I'm having lots of plan. Because now we see there is a lot of folk art form is in the dying state. In order to preserve that folk, we have initiative, especially Director of Art and Culture, we have initiative to make the documentary and audio visuals of that art form. Second thing, he talks about the houses. Actually, the Goa now is having the lack of land. And the land which is possessing is in the hand of landlords. Landlords are not giving any permission to one that ancestral proper Goan to construct or to repair his house in the as it is positions. There are so many hurdles the special Goikar are facing these times of these sorts of questions. So in order to avoid all these things, then people, our Goans, if they goes today for the work, then only they are going to get a bread and butter. We have to focus on that area. We have to focus in those people who has really maintained, who has really preserved its own culture. If we are not going to preserve that culture, it is very difficult us to make this Goa a very cultural hub.
Thank you. That's a terrific message. I think that the point is very valid and it's been made by everyone on this panel, which is that we have something very precious to preserve, but it's not by accident. It is because all the generations of Goans from all different levels of society, from all different backgrounds, have maintained their culture. I'm very happy to hear that you continue to dance and hold on to the culture, because that is the only way it can that we have something to pass on and it is very valuable. I'd like to throw it to the audience if you have any questions. One or two, please. You, please, first. Could you introduce yourself?
Okay, I have something that, I visit Nagaland once a year, from December 1st to 8th. They have a festival called the Hornbill Festival. Now this brings the whole 17 tribes together, and they have various aspects. They have the dances, they have various things. Even the houses built at a place called Kisama, which is close to Kohima, has this actual architecture of the village they come from, the 17 tribes. Now, if you are thinking of something like this, why can't we have, if you are thinking maybe Panjim or wherever as a cultural hub, why can't we have one place where we can have a program and all the culture of Goa is focused on, say, 8 or 10 days of the week, where everything is done. You have a seminar hall, you have this, you have an amphitheater where people can watch the thing, and have a good exposure to culture where people will visit also.
Actually, coming to the point, to preserve this culture of Goan culture, we have given a lot of support, financial support, and we are going to the interior part of every village to maintain its culture. And as far as Nagaland, what you are talking about, last 1 month back, I have also met to that minister, And he was talking about, that's why we have decided to the cultural exchange of the interstate. That is what we have in our mind. We are having also tied up with the West Zone Cultural Center and the South Zone Cultural Center. Now we have tied up with the entire states of the country, where we are going to exchange our own culture with the other part and their culture to our state. So that if we want to have, because India is a big country, if any tourist, international tourist is coming to any part of the India, then we should show them our Indian culture at one place. That is my point, and that is why we are thinking of bringing all the major cultural folks at one place. We have planned to study and research on these cultural folks or the cultural identity of the country.
That's an excellent question, and I think
it has happened. In fact, I have taken a group from here to Assam.
Definitely.
And it has worked very well there.
Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. As a matter of fact, the Goa Arts and Literature Festival over the last 7 years has continually had an exchange with the Northeast. I don't know if you know that. Yes. For instance, we had people from Ahotra in Majuli Island come here, and we have writers and artists. It works like dynamite. Yeah. It's a wonderful exchange. So as many of those, I think it's a wonderful idea, and I wish you the best of luck with that particular endeavor. You had a question?
Yeah.
Please introduce yourself. Yes.
You see, Mr. Gowda, you brought a very good point about Golkarpan, which is about identity, right? Own identity. And, I think we should have a regulation or a law where the architectural synchronity or, the structure resonates with the same art and form. So, the TCP and the Art and Culture Department should work together. There should be a process wherein, you all know what is happening where, so that there is some uniformity in the architecture. The other thing I want to say is that, there is this organization called INTAC, and they have been working with schools where they have made a club called Film It Club. And my children have benefited a lot, where the children have gone to these heritage places and they have made small short films. Okay, but what happens in the schools right now is that if the principal is interested in it, that activity happens. Now in this particular school, the principal has changed. So now that activity is not happening. But my other two children who passed out from the school have benefited, and they really value the heritage around Goa. So I think we should look at that.
Definitely. The additional co-curriculum activities which are taken by the students right now. So on the similar lines, in order to give the inspiration to all the students, and I have also decided that as per how the sports policy, they are giving the marks to the students, I have also decided to give the cultural merit marks to the students who are preserving this art and culture, because unless and until we are not throwing this on to the next generation to come, because otherwise our culture is going to die. So it is our generation, coming generation should keep on transform our culture from one to another, and that is what I think. And the second question which you have put, because the TCP and the Directorate of Art and Culture is a very different, because TCP, they have frame a rules and regulation on the different basis. Our art and culture policy is just 10 years old, whereas it is across the country. What I am talking about, the TCP. It is very difficult us to align or have a dialogue with the TCP and art and culture. But definitely we can take your view. If it is possible from my side, definitely we are going to look upon this.
I think we're basically coming to an end. Are there any more questions? One question, Miguel.
Some years back I came down to Sarawak.
Miguel, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Miguel from Mamsa. And in this island of Borneo, where 3 countries function, the Sultanate of Brunei, Indonesian Borneo, and this Sarawak or Sabah province of Malaysia. They have a village called the Sarawak Cultural Village. 4 tribes, 3 communities, the Malay, the Chinese, and the local Borneo community is there, plus 4 tribes. they have in this village houses of each tribe, where people of each tribe or representatives of that particular tribe are they wear their costume, they cook their type of food, and they perform their type of dances in the evening when they have a program. So we have something that is really culturally authentic. Whereas here in Goa, on the river cruise, the reason to attract more tourists, you have the Dekni being danced with a Mysore sari. Never done. It should have been with a Nowari. But you cannot change costumes fast, and it's a requirement of that particular 1 hour cruise that you adjust the same people to dance the Koredi, the Dekni, and another dance also. So they don't really do the dance the authentic way. If you have a village like this, and through the Department of Art and Culture or something, we can create something. It need not be in Penny, maybe somewhere close by enough for people to go. And we have a long tourist season from October till March at least. If this could be kept alive and running. We have the Lokutsav. This year I had been to the Lokutsav, but I find that if you go 3 days in a row, you see the same dances. So for a tourist who wants to understand a little bit about the local dances, it's not like the Hornbill Festival where each time it's a different dance. It's a different tribe, different community doing it. So if we could present this package, maybe in a week there would be no repeat. Next week maybe Monday it would be the same thing as this Monday. But if you could have this, if you could have the houses like how they have in Sarawak of different communities. Right down in Vishwesh spoke about a Dangar community. Very rarely you get to see the house. You'll have to go to Kaure or you'll have to go to some place in Shelde or somewhere to see. You can't see. Even if you want to see anywhere in Bade, you can't find a Dangar house. And the tourist doesn't end up there. When we talk even about agriculture college in Sulkarna, people ask, where is Sulkarna? So Kaure is out of the way for a tourist to see. Whether we can have it a representative of different kinds of houses, not just the big colonial Indo-Portuguese type of houses, but even the local houses, the Rane type of houses, which are different. The houses of the Savans in Satari are different. If you could have these representations in some place, it would be nice. Of course, it would be a long-term project, but somewhere we could make a start. And for the dances that we have, possibly even the old secretariat could serve. I think it was being developed to be something alive, and something a museum, which part of it is going to be. So if you could have it even now alive with some dances, because the platform is already available, it's done, it's ready, there is no need of making investment, what you have to get. And the other thing that I would like to see is whether the government could partner the private initiatives which are already there. I'm not canvassing for them, but Mahendra Alvarez's ancestral Goa has a few elements, but he's also going commercial because he needs to sustain it and money is hard to come by. So also Vivek spoke about Victor Hugo Gomes. Beautiful job with Goa Chitra and Goa Chatka, but he also needs to go a little commercial to make it survive. So if we could have art and culture partnering them and also giving them a sense of direction, not just money, also a sense of direction so that we can really have the culture. Victor Hugo started completely culturally, but he also understands that you have to survive. So he needs to do something else. So if we can work on this, I think that we have, for a change, a minister who's interested in, and a minister who knows part of the culture, is involved in dance and music, and it would be good to take it forward.
You spoke about the river cruises, they are not maintaining, or it is totally in the point of business form. That's why in order to cut off all these, I have decided to come out with the Panjim as a cultural city, where our museum will be converted. So there will be total traditional and the perfect Goan culture, which we are going to show to the tourists of the country as well as the international tourists.
One second, we'll come.
Yeah, definitely.
And I must say, in this regard, the Art and Culture Department here, under Prasad Loliekar mostly, who's been consistent, as well as the center, has been quite wonderful about creating funds for independent ventures. So there are very excellent schemes where you can, different museums, always can be done more, where you can access funds. Yes. We've had a very robust conversation, and I think at this point we'll continue it off. But I would like to thank Vishwesh and also Jack, and particularly after a very long time, Mr. Gaude, we've heard a very positive, strong voice coming from your ministership, And congratulations, and you have all of our support. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
शिवाय आणि दुसरे कुणा आमका मेवची इतलं मोय पासरी इतले आजारी सोदा तास्टी सोडणारानीक मेवची ना आसलेशा सोंदिरातल्यान संसार पोयता गोंयचे येदा शांतीची खबर घेऊन येता Ului turio cielo Mogam ka końcu osamita sobie basa
Kosztani, dukani, sangatan bawurle Bawani, boynani, goya banle Sogle durmek salele Chiar coctale, voce mate, paso gibit bedoile. Alza cercando la diso aizo. Non c'è pusto calcivo urtolo. Urwozani am candello. Sobirgao alto Burgani amcha sambar Dolia puro Dorgonzata goici Anche son sarà capuro bai piti
Ani kusu so woskaj Zoshi goi karaji Citna su forza di puta duaci Deso poro
Noi carag mananu leka Kedeba Sogle moganu gielta Dondara
Karayun poro bisoke Bombay la terra Goshi oslitaj sambalja urara Koštani, drugari Sorata,